I'm going to give everyone a minute to kind of circle in here. That's not an expression. Drop in here. Circle in. I don't know what that is.
Sounds like a Texas thing.
Yeah, circle the wagons. I don't know. I'm kind of combining phrases today. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. My name is Kelsey Erickson Streufert. I'm the Chief Public Affairs for the Texas Restaurant Association. Thank you so much for joining us today for a really exciting panel. We're kind of kicking off the end of Women's History Month with a panel of fabulous women who have all been an inspiration to me and who have a lot to share with us about where the industry is heading, how we can work together to make it even better. Please engage in the discussion with us. You can drop comments, questions, anecdotes, hellos, whatever you want in the chat. My coworker Alexandra and I are going to be monitoring that as we go. And we are recording this. So if you miss anything or want to go back and watch it, it will be available later tonight on our YouTube channel. So with that, I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, starting with our fearless leader, TRA's President and CEO, Dr. Emily Williams-Knight.
Hi, everyone. With you today from Dallas, but before I guess maybe when the sun goes down, I'll be in Austin. So I make that trip quite often. So I just have the good fortune of leading this organization. Believe it or not, I spent most of my life in restaurants and hospitality, but in various parts, from the education side to now, of course, running this great institution. So it's an honor to be, especially with this group of women that I admire so much.
Makisha, why don't you go next?
Good afternoon, Makisha Hill. I am the Senior Channel Commercialization lead for our food service and on-premise channel at Coca-Cola Southwest. Like, I could definitely not say that 3 times in a row. I am in the Dallas area, born and raised in Chicago. I have been working for Coke in this world for about 10 years, which is all marketing and sales. And just the opportunity to really talk about women and celebrate women is just a joy to do that today.
Awesome. Karen, you're up next.
Yes, thanks, Kelsey, for including me. I'm coming in live from Chicago today, cold and rainy. So I hope you're all enjoying that nice sunshine in Dallas. We're just waiting for spring to show up. Look, I'm the president and CEO of Native Foods. It's the original 100% plant-based restaurant chain. And gosh, we're just having a lot of fun. Plant-based is so on trend right now. So much innovation, and honest to God, the food is getting better and better. So it's an exciting time to be in this industry, especially in this segment. But I've been part of the industry, gosh, I'm coming up on 50 years. I cannot believe it. I've just loved restaurant operations my entire career, and I followed the growth, starting out in quick service, and then a long time in casual dining, and now in fast casual. So just been a lot of fun. And again, thank you for having me today.
Thanks, Karen. All right, Nikki, bring us home.
Hi, I'm Nikki Pina-Watana. Sawadee ka, as I like to say. It's such an honor to be with your amazing ladies here and hearing your story. I've been in the industry, I guess, maybe half the time, about 20 years or so. Owner, operator, creator of Asian Mint Restaurant here in the Dallas area. We currently have 4 locations working on, and just having a lot of fun, getting to be very creative and in my creative zone, because now I've kind of branched out and doing a lot of fun things like a Thai takeover YouTube stuff. I've been doing a lot of cooking classes that I've been doing for a while, and launching Sauce Line CPG goods. So just really having fun, as I would say.
I love that. All right, I'm gonna start with a softball here, hopefully. Want to know what drew y'all to the hospitality industry. Karen, we're going to start with you, since you've got 50 years in the industry. Clearly there's something about it that's kept you in all this time.
You know, when they talk about the American dream, I think I lived that. We grew up, relatively Well, with very little means, but just parents who believed, that we could accomplish anything. And the food service industry provided that, but it's going to sound rather shallow, but started off working at McDonald's. We used to call it the lobby, the front counter, before we even had dining rooms in all the locations. And you know what it was? It was these area directors would come in and they had brand new company cars. Our family never owned a new car in our entire lives until, gosh, I want to say like I was already in college, and that was such a big deal. And I thought if I joined the restaurant industry, I would have a new car. And by 1980, I was driving a Buick Century, brand new.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I did it.
You've arrived.
You've arrived, Karen.
Emily, what about you? I know you have a fun story about how you were drawn into this industry.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like Karen, and mine was, and I've told it so much, but I was on a military base. So my mom and dad were first in the Navy. Then my mom, after sort of the Vietnam era, my dad stayed in. And so we were on a military base, and there was a show called Hotel with Connie Selica. And I had dark hair, and I just would look at her, and she was taking care of everybody and, providing like guest service. And it just felt magical, this fictitious San Francisco hotel, and so far away from sort of everything that was being on a military base where your parents have the same jobs, they make the same income, everyone's house is the same, everyone goes to the same school, right? There's just not a lot of, it's special to be in that community, but and so I, in third grade, told my parents that I was going into hospitality, didn't even know what it was, but wanted to be part of that. And literally never changed, even through college, when I got a scholarship from the Connecticut Hotel and Restaurant Association to pursue my undergraduate. And it's been very unique, I think, but what I love and why I stay is honestly, it's just the joy of service and the hospitality of being able to do something and watch someone else's reaction and know that you've provided them joy. I mean, it's just, we always say this, I'm sure Karen agrees. I mean, in the restaurant space, and Nikki, it's in your blood. It's hard once you get in to get out. And it's not like a prison sentence either. So that's my story.
One of the things I love about y'all's stories, and it's represented so well here, is the hospitality track, the hospitality career doesn't just look like one thing, right? Most people wouldn't think of leading an association as hospitality. Makisha, Nikki, y'all are examples of that too. Y'all have different kind of paths in our industry. Tell us about that. Nikki, you go first.
Did you say Makisha or Nikki?
I said Nikki, but either way, fine. Just trying to be air traffic controller so we're not all talking at once.
So why did I get into hospitality? I think it is like what you said. It just goes beyond. It just, like I often say it feeds my soul. And I realized after you do it for a while, there's so much more than just the food component. There's so much more than just the service component. It just becomes all encompassing of feeding that person's soul. And like what Emily said, if we had just changed that person's perspective before they walk out, let's say my restaurant, and that they're going to go and, make the world a better place the way that they were meant to be, I feel like I've done my job and I've been put on this earth. Like my calling is to make sure that I can inspire people. And the medium or the platform just happens to be the restaurant, the hospitality industry, and serving people. It's just been doing that. And it's just so funny how you stumble into it, starting off as like a food delivery person. That's how I started off, busser, host, to go specs, like literally just climbing the ladder. You just never know. Like right now I call myself, like I'm more in biz dev, marketing, and just kind of creative. Who would ever think also a part of like the hospitality job title? It's amazing.
Yeah, that's right.
Love that. Makisha, I know you have a unique perspective on this too.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually got into the industry literally by accident. I was asked to do an interview as a favor for a food service company to lead their fundraising efforts. So I'm thinking, food, fundraising, how does that work? But they wanted to bring a unique concept that people would use their grocery budget to be able to fundraise because it was an underprivileged area. So me coming from a consulting, accounting firm, professional services, I did the interview and I fell in love with the CEO, who is a powerful, dynamic woman who I love today. And it was just the fact of when she said about her purpose in life, mine is to give. And I learned that very early through my parents, is just to give and give back. And whenever something fuels your soul, it just makes you feel good. I always tell people that you go through a career. For me, it has to feed my heart, but also financially be rewarding because I have 3 kids. But to be able to have that on a professional level, that's just been incredible. I worked at that company. It was very hard for me to even leave. But when we relocated, she's like, oh, you can travel back and forth. But I really wanted to give that parent sense at that time. And then I fell into Coca-Cola, which, as you know, just the bringing of happiness every day and every experience and how it connects to that, it really feeds my heart. So that's for me and my source of giving. I just think that's just been so impactful in the industry.
It's wonderful.
Love that. Well, speaking of giving, one of the themes I definitely want to touch on today is mentorship. I think that's an incredibly powerful way to give and receive, right? You give and gain something every time you're either a mentor or a mentee. So want to hear from y'all, anyone who has a story on, what mentorship has meant to them and their career. And again, it can be from the perspective of a mentor, a mentee, or both. Don't everyone jump in at once. Karen, going to you.
I think Karen should go.
Yes, I can go. I really twofold. I think, one, I want to talk a little bit about the work that, that we're doing today with a group called the Gleam Network. And I'm just so proud of it. I think, as we think about, we just talked about how we kind of came into the industry. I really want to focus on how I leave the industry, and I want to make sure that it's better than what it was when I came in. And Gleam, I think, is going to definitely play a big part in that, in making our industry a bit better. But first, you asked about a mentor that I had, and this gentleman's name is Luke Hossack, and I was working at Applebee's at the time, and I went in and said that I wanted to step up and be, I was the SVP of operations, and I wanted to be the COO and oversee all of operations. And I remember when I walked into Lou and just said, hey, I'm going to put my name in the hat. And the first thing he said was, well, Karen, let's think about that. Who's in the room when the decision is made? So I thought, that's pretty interesting question. I said, well, the 7 guys that are on the senior team, right? And how many of them are going to support you? And I'm thinking, gosh, we're killing it out here. They're all going to support me. Then he asked me the question. He said, so Karen, when's the last time any of them have come to you to ask for any advice? And I said, well, and then I had every excuse. I'm in the field. I haven't seen anything. And he goes, and when's the last time you went to them for any advice? And I couldn't even name a time in the last year. And he said, and how many of them support you? And I had to turn around and say, well, I guess none. And boy, there was a big mentoring lesson for me that, you really need to you need to use your network. You need to really have some good insight in what they're working on and how you can work together as a team. So I think that was one of the valuable lessons that I had. And I will tell you afterwards, obviously, I got the role, but I had to work hard for it and go in and build those relationships. So that was really cool. So we can have everybody else's stories, but I'd love to talk a little bit about Gleam as well. Do you want me to say it a little bit now, or you?
Sure, go ahead. And I shared a link in the chat so folks can find the website too.
Okay, well, great. So Gleam Network, and you can find it at gleamnetwork.net. And it's really a volunteer, all volunteer-based nonprofit that we started right after the pandemic began. And what we found out that there were a lot of companies that had unfortunately had to cut back, or people were laid off. And a lot of that happened in learning and development as well. So our goal was to simply provide mentorship and leadership development to the underserved communities. And when we look at the population of the people working in our restaurants, we know that 52% of them are women and minorities, but as they move up the ladder, you don't see those percentages stay. So we thought, how can we provide that same type of opportunity for those individuals? And we started the Gleam Network. So far, we've had four cohorts completed, 235 mentoring pairings so far. And it is some of the most meaningful work that we have ever done. And the stories are just beautiful. So we just launched our 5th cohort. We have a student group, and that's also started as well. And I know we're doing a pilot with the Texas Restaurant Association as well that we're super excited about. In addition to that, we're trying to reach a little further into the organization. We just started a group called the Career Advancement Program. That's the CAP program. That's for your hourly team members who show promise and some, really just some resolve to say, I want to move up in the industry, but I don't know how. It's a 9-week boot camp to learn the soft skills. And we just kicked off 3 cohorts, and we're really excited about bringing people up in the industry and helping them understand that this can be an amazing career.
Thank you so much for that, Karen. We've talked to the folks at Gleam quite a bit. Really fabulous program. And I think what I love about Gleam and your story, Karen, is it really illustrates you have to be intentional about these things, right? You can't just sort of sit back and wait for someone to mentor you, or sit back and wait to build your network. So I think that was such a great example. Makisha, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think on 2 parts. The first part about being a mentor, I think the piece that you connect with your mentee, and it's the sense of trust and honesty. Because as a mentor, you're not there to just tell people how great they are, but to make them greater than where they're at today. And the best advice I remember when I didn't understand the importance of having a mentor and having someone who was going to be that trusted person, but also that person was going to be honest. I was a director. I was a new mom, and my VP said, every time you are leaving early or you are taking a day off, you provide me a full explanation. None of your counterparts or peers do that. And I was the only woman. And when he said that, I was so thankful that he tapped me on the shoulder at such an early stage in my career. I was still a director, I was a new director, new mom, all these different responsibilities. But him making me aware that wasn't necessary wouldn't have never been something that I would have never knew that moving forward. The second piece that he told me is be confident in who you are and what you know. And walk into a room as if you own it. And I have used that from that mentor from now into forever, that I'll never forget. Bob Ladick, who is retired on a beach somewhere right now, but he was a person to really provide me that key advice. But that's what I mean with a mentor piece of it on both sides, just that clear, honest love and trust. It's so important.
I'll kind of tell a funny story. And it's funny, we do remember these moments, I think. And mine, it was probably one of the most pivotal parts of my career. And something Kelsey said, and also Karen, you have to be intentional and you have to seek out a mentor, right? So you need to be able to look around and say, who is doing great things that maybe align to my values, to my culture, and you identify that person. And then you make really good use of their time. I think all of us have mentored people in the past. And when you sit down, they're like, so how are you? It's like, no, use me, right? But also let me help you develop. And so I had, I got into a new role. I was managing the West Coast for a company. I was very young. I think I was 29. And I have a lot of facial expressions, which I'm sure you have noticed. And one way it's good because you never have to wonder what I'm thinking. But we were in a meeting and it was 9 men and Emily. And I have to be honest, I've never really noticed that, right? So I didn't notice that. My mom taught me, if there's a seat at the table, take the head of the table seat, right? Like just show up. And so we were in a meeting and we leave and my boss says, I need to see you for a second. Knight, my last name. And I'm like, oh, he's going to tell me I'm amazing because I was so smart in that meeting. So we walk over to his office and he sits down and he goes, you will never progress past this VP role if you don't stop with the facial expressions. And I'm like, what? Like I'm in sales. And he's like, when people in that room say really dumb stuff, it's very clear from your face that you think they're really dumb. And I was like, but they are dumb. He goes, that's my point. You need to make sure they don't think that you're dumb. I'm like, can we just go back to they're really dumb? And I realized that diplomacy, that when you're young, you feel like right is right and wrong is wrong. Sometimes you have to let the guy be dumb and then, or the woman, and then kind of go around. But he then became someone that to this day, when I make job changes, I still call him and I go through what's required. And then he's very clear about you're deficient here, or you'd be excelling here. And if you can get people to tell you the truth, as hard as it is, I promise you it's the most value you will get in your career. And I still have facial expressions. As Kelsey knows.
These are awesome. Sorry,
Nikki, you want to give you a chance to jump in on mentorship too.
So I have a really funny perspective. When I started my restaurant at 27, I was head down, work, 20 hours a day, whatever had to happen. And I think the environment or my space lent out that people were watching, you know, you're working hard. And then one day Sharon Van Meter came on, a few of us know her. And she was like, so how long have you been in the business? I think I was maybe in like 5 years or so at that time. And she's like, well, let me know when you're 7 years in, or like, what is it that you're really looking for? And I'm like, you know what? I believe in education so much that like I educate or I mentor my staff like one-to-one all the time when I was starting the business. But I'm like, how can I give all the lessons that I've learned starting a business to somebody who might not have that opportunity? And she's like, oh, I have something for you. And that's kind of how I got into the Texas Restaurant Association, or the La Dame d'Escoffier, because she's like, well, there are people like you out there looking for the same thing and wanting to, you know, further kind of like what Corinne had said. I want to leave this space in a better place, an easier entrance for a lot of people who are going to have to go through what I through, but not have to go through what I through. And it's just been a true blessing, anyone who's come in. And then I kind of hooked onto them. You're like, okay, how else can I help? How else can I help? What else can I do? But then that feedback that you get back, because they see that you're so eager, you're so excited to share that, they're like, okay, let me help you as well. Let me, you know, say you need to be doing this and this, or not doing this or that, just kind of like what Emily was saying. And it's just been life changing, and being able to do that for the younger generation coming in. It also is so rewarding, and we have to lift as we climb. As one of my mentors say, you know, there's enough space for everyone. You know, it's not a competition. It really is, you know, what is it called? That's when the tide rises, all ship rise. Is that what it's?
Yeah. High tide, all ships rise. Yep.
But yeah, that's what I look at mentorship, what it's all about.
That's awesome. And I'm totally going to steal Lift as We Climb. That is
Love that.
Wonderful. Okay. I want to get into some of the stats that Karen mentioned earlier. So as y'all know, we have a real challenge in our industry, as so many do, when it comes to women really progressing through leadership and having a seat at the table where the decisions are being made. So just for some context, our industry is 52% women hourly employees, but only 29% of our unit level managers are women, 23% of our executives are women, and 17 of our industry's board members are women. So you can literally see at each of those rungs of the ladder, so to speak, women are dropping off pretty significantly. And we all know that's only gotten worse during the pandemic. Women experienced a disproportionate amount of job loss, particularly at the peak of the pandemic. We know that childcare responsibilities, caring for parents, often, not always, but often falls on women. And Lord knows those requirements were taken to a new level during the pandemic with school closures and everything else. So let's have an honest conversation about, you know, what's the root of some of these challenges, and how do we, as a group of fierce female leaders in this industry, start to tackle them? Emily, I'll start with you.
I have 16-year-old twin girls, so I'm not sure we want to start with me. And Kelsey knows this, something that became very apparent in the pandemic to me is now sort of this passion project around childcare. Because when I look at the numbers, and Kelsey and I look at this a lot, it's still like 1.4 million women who haven't come back. And I know in the pandemic, I was head down working every day as hard as I could. At the same time, I was carrying the entire emotional well-being of not only my children, but of my parents. So I'm in that generation where I'm so fortunate to have both my parents, but then you're now in the middle kind of squeezed. And then as we climb, which I think is why you see all that leakage out of the pipeline, is it just becomes too much, right? You are accountable to, let alone social media, but to the immediate people in your life. And it's not just the physical work. I try to point this out. It is the mental and emotional drain of when you simply say, I just can't do this, or it's not worth it. And so, I think we need to, at the hourly level, we have to tackle childcare. I mean, even if we get to $20 an hour, if it's $17 an hour to put your 2 children in childcare, and every time they get a cold, they're sent home and you can't go to work. I mean, the math just doesn't work. It's not right. And so that is something now I really want to solve. I think for our industry to recover, we have to solve that. I also think we need to be the flexibility of what we may need as women now. We've got to think about how we integrate that more aggressively into, and I get people say our jobs can't be done at home, but many parts of those jobs can be done at home. Maybe not the direct service, but that flexibility of pooling restaurants. And so workers have more choice of, I'll work 2 days here and 2 days there, right? We're sharing more. I mean, there's just lots of models I think we can be figuring out. And I think last, it's this notion of blending. I think that a lot of women, and I face this, where I wanted to be great at my job and great as a mother, but actually most days I'm not great at both. And I tried to separate them. And I'm sure a lot of psychologists are going to flip out for me saying this, but like, I can't, it's a blend, right? I mix it all together. If my daughters walked in right now, I'm super comfortable with that, because you would all see me as both a mom and the CEO of this organization. If my dogs come in, like, it's just, I bring them to events. Some are boring to them, some are not, but like, I mix it all together. And that way I don't feel like one is pulling me from the other. So I just think we need to have more real conversations about what women are experiencing, especially with this pandemic moment, and stop trying to pretend that we're all okay. We've got to figure that out. That's my soapbox.
Emily, that's so true. My last company, we actually surveyed the women in our workplace and really just tried to find out is, why don't you go after the promotions as aggressively as you should? And we came up with 5 things. And Makisha already said one. Lack of confidence was by far number 1. I'm comfortable in my current role, right? And then my team needs me. They depend on me right now. So wasn't going to leave the team behind. The ones that, I'm doing the best that I can with my home and my work balance, right now. So I just don't want to upset the apple cart, right? Or that they said, I'm not ready. And you're like, I know you're ready. No, I'm not ready, right? But we often, as you often said, it's the family card still. They still have the primary role for the home and family care. And we listened to Hudson really talk recently from the Restaurant Association, where he said at the start of the pandemic, we started to see more men step up into that role, especially around grocery shopping, because they thought it was safer, like they would go for the families and all. But that's all kind of gone back to where it was. And once again, the women are still the primary caregivers at home. So,
well, and I think, Karen, that imposter syndrome, everyone listening to this, go look it up, because the minute you can uncover that you actually are dealing with imposter syndrome, where you don't think you're good enough, or someone's going to find out that you don't have the skills. I watched someone once say to me, you know what, and this is, again, no disrespect, but it's how hard women are. A man looks at a job posting and says, I'm going to kick butt. A woman goes, I can't do that one. I can't do that. Oh, I'm out. I mean, and it really comes back to that imposter syndrome, like that someone is going to find out if we get this job that we're not as smart and as talented as we really are. And I've certainly faced that early in my career.
Absolutely.
I think also with all of the things you talk about, I think when you talk about the confidence piece, we have to be prepared and ready to say what we need.
Yes.
That's a big one. I think if we're upfront, be comfortable in what we bring to the table and know that no matter what, I can still do this and be good. But saying, I need a late start time. I am not going to walk in the door before 9 o'clock, and being comfortable in that. And I'm going to give you more than I ever take back, because once my kids are asleep, I'm going to log back on and do whatever it is that I need to get done, no matter what. But being comfortable in saying, hey, I need to take this call via Zoom instead of in person, because I have family responsibilities. But instead, we try to make it all work to be there absolutely at 8 o'clock when we know that is no good to anyone. We're putting ourselves in danger of how fast we're driving to get there. We're putting on makeup and lipstick in the car. We're driving with flip-flops and flipping them off and then walking as fast as we possibly can to that meeting. But just pausing and really realizing, I need to be here at 9 o'clock. I will not be here at 8. That doesn't fit my schedule. And that be it. I think we have to ask. We have to ask for what it is that we need to be the most productive person for our companies.
That's so powerful. And that's that self-worth, right? That women,
yes,
they just want to do what they're told or asked and not willing to, they'll make all the sacrifice. We'll just make all the sacrifice instead of saying, and I think that's very powerful. That's really a good something for especially the young people like Kelsey to
yes.
Remember.
One thing that I've been doing in my business unknowingly, I think just as a human being, is when I started putting myself first, my staff realized how much more effective I was, how much of a better leader I was when I wasn't running on empty. And they saw that, you know what, I'm able to give Nikki grace. And you know what, she still shows up 150% all the time. And when she can't, I'm here to pick it up. So I've been able to build a community of women and men who understand, well, here are all the things to do. But if you know her, if you know that particular person, men or women, and they're doing their job at 100% of their level, of their capacity, there is, like Keisha said, there are opportunities where you can say, you know what, I can come in at 9. Can somebody else come in at 8? Come and do what needs to get done. And I'm going to pick up and pick up where it's left off and make it happen. As long as the job gets done in the best way possible, I feel, it is the new way of looking at a job description or how a corporation needs to run as a whole. It needs to everyone needs to support each other. And being able to do that, I can happily say that, I have managers and right-hand and left-hand people who've been able to have, buy a Tesla, for example, get a home loan, feel comfortable that they are able to move out. They're not in a position where their job's going to be taken away if they can't perform a job, because we can communicate that. They can have maternity leave. They can go pick up their kid when their kid is sick. Like, we are here as a tribe, right? It takes a tribe to raise my kids. And even so funny, when I was having kids while I was running the restaurant, still now, I literally would ask my managers and say, hey, can I have another kid? Should I have another kid? Even my mom, like, hey, I'm going to have a second child. Do you want this? Like, it's a decision. And just having that conversation, it's so helpful, because it is life. It is life.
I think also the education to companies and restaurant owners that to have tiered start times and be open to be able to effectively have the best person in your restaurant, whatever role that they play. If you want that, be flexible with that individual, because they're going to run through walls for you when you do.
Yep. That's exactly right.
I do think that's one of the best things to come out of the pandemic is it sort of forced us to acknowledge that not everyone is the same. Not everyone has the same schedule. Not everyone has the same family needs. And so to the extent you can be flexible and help people be their best whenever that time frame is for them, you're going to get such a better result. And I love what Emily said about work-life blending, because that is me to a T. Emily knows I'll be on the exercise bike doing emails and then jump right on a Zoom, and then I'll shower at like 3 p.m. and do a meeting, right? But it's like, I'm so much more productive that way versus the old model. I used to have to get ready in the morning. I'm not a morning person. Spend 30 minutes to an hour in traffic for no reason other than because, work started at 9. So everyone had to spend an hour in traffic to get at work at 9, and you just think about what a waste of time and energy all of that is. And sometimes there's only so much flexibility. Sometimes you got to open the restaurant at a certain time and you got to find someone who can do that. But to the extent that we can be flexible, you do get so much more out of people. So I love all of that kind of.
And I've been testing, I've been testing working on a cruise ship. I think it's very important research. And I think we need maybe another year of the internet evolving on these ships, but that is my full intention, because my team knows that as long as the work is happening, I don't care where they are, right? We're very customer facing and we travel enough, but if somebody needs a couple of days out of the office in a different environment and they're still connected and productive, that's fantastic. But I can tell you, I have run into situations where people have told me that that is an incorrect way to lead, that if they're not in front of you, you don't know if they're working. And I just have to say, and I said this at the ProStart competition this weekend, I said, you all are so talented, these young people, and you have indicated that you want to spend your future, your time, talent, treasure in our industry. It is now incumbent upon us to create an environment for them to excel and to thrive. And most importantly, to stay. I'm sure everyone saw today, the numbers came out from the last month of employee churn, and it was 6% of our workforce. So if we don't change the relationship with these employees and do some of the things that you've all mentioned, we won't have those employees, right? And so it's sort of like the pandemic has accelerated that. And I think it's a chance for us to insert things like kindness and flexibility and, the all around way we take care of our employees holistically versus just for the job they do. To me, that is so exciting. And I really am looking forward to just being part of that shift, which it's going to have to happen. I don't think we have a choice.
I think that's exactly right. I think part of our challenge as an industry, and I would love for y'all to jump in here, benefits, right? Family benefits, health insurance, childcare, a career ladder where people see, okay, maybe I'm starting as an hourly employee, but here's the path that I can start on right now to get to that Buick or to get to that Tesla or whatever it is that you're aiming for. Any thoughts on how we adapt as an industry, how we innovate and really create that career path that people see as sustainable and as something that they want to be a part of?
One of the things that I always talk about, Kelsey, is that we have to do a great job of making our industry look attractive, right? And it's been interesting because I think I've had this nice historical look and have just a perspective of watching how women grew in the industry. And I would say, thinking back the last few decades, there's definitely been an uneven playing field for women, right? The job decisions that women make are scrutinized so much more heavily. The amount of time women in leadership roles are given to succeed is shorter, I would say, than men. Getting your foot in the door is more difficult. Failures are publicized, and you could say like you could see men in the same role with less results and continuing to be sought after in the industry. And for a lot of women, as I've talked to and I've met over the years, I think we all know all of the top women in the industry, it wears people out. But what excites me and what Emily just started to speak about is this next generation of women and this next generation of leaders, men and women, are finding their voice. And ultimately, companies that aren't enlightened, people that don't have a great work culture, you're going to be exposed, right? Ultimately, you'll pay the price because we will all choose to work elsewhere where we're supported, we're cared about, we're valued, there's flexibility, we can have a great home life, and we can have a great work life. And that culture is so important. But that's what I'm excited about this next generation. They get it, and they can choose us because the companies that choose to be good will benefit from that new workforce that's coming up with a lot of energy and a lot of new ideas.
I love that. I think one place that we have to talk about in terms of moving the industry forward is our industry does unfortunately have a bad reputation when it comes to sexual assault, sexual harassment. I think that's a place where we've absolutely seen people use their voice, to Karen's point, and rise up and say, enough is enough. We can't continue to put up with this. It's not to say we're now perfect or cured or anything like that. It's an ongoing issue. But I feel like we would be remiss in this honest conversation if we didn't point out that that is something that we have to continue to work on. Don't know if anyone wants to jump in on that one.
I'm just going to jump in from my own personal experience, even being working from a corporate level for food service. I had a customer, a client, which was probably a $10 million customer, just to point that out. It was very impactful for us to be able to gain this business, but everything he said to me was extremely inappropriate. And at the time, EVP, who is amazing, said, we're walking away. Mm-hmm. We are walking away. We have addressed it. It didn't happen. We're walking away. Well, what happened was, by us standing up for that and having that voice, that was something that had never been brought to their corporation before. That he had gotten away with this for so many years, being disrespectful and stepping over the line. But because one voice, Nikisha Hill, who has a very big voice, said something and got that buy-in from my EVP, change was able to happen. I think that we have to be able to say it even when it's uncomfortable. Change doesn't happen until we're both uncomfortable to be able to move forward.
So true.
I think it's gotten better, but I can't really speak for the industry, and I think it starts at the top. We have a culture. I always say, and I always tell my team, I'm G-rated. Even my kids can't believe that, but I really am. I just I feel if I can stay clean and make sure that the conversations we have are appropriate and business oriented, that it's better. But look, growing up in the industry, it was tough. I filed sexual harassment twice, and it's like all I wanted was the behavior to stop, and both pretty serious. One, fighting myself off from a rape, right? And for two drunk guys coming back from a training, it was horrible. And when I reported it, you know what my boss said? Well, it takes two to tango. And I'm like, what? It was like so horrible that, and I just look back at those times and I guess I just have zero tolerance, just no place for it. And, ultimately, well, they moved the companies out, but they let both situations, both guys became franchisees. That didn't make any sense to me, but things have definitely gotten better. I think you think back in '86, I think when, it's even Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas, thing like that. That's when you really started to see a lot of change with sexual harassment. And so I hope our industry is better, but I think we all as leaders have to have a zero tolerance policy and take people seriously when they complain.
Yeah, I would say, to Karen's point, I think there's two things that really, I remember early in my career, I was with a group and it was all men and we were in Las Vegas, which I didn't really understand because it's like only bad stuff happens there. And that's not a plug for don't go to Las Vegas. But when I was younger, I was like, wow, it's like drinking and gambling and okay, shows, I'll do the shows. And then we left a show one night and they all piled into a gentleman's club and they said, let's go. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then I realized that I went back to my hotel room by myself and I just stayed by myself. And what I finally learned and really struck was that, wait a minute, they're all having a conversation in there together that I'm not in. So I'm doubly disadvantaged, right? And so it felt even more unfair. But at the same time, to Makisha's example, actually, when I arrived here, I had a situation with an external person, chose not to say anything, talked to my husband about it at the time. And this is where my point on the board's going to come in. I didn't feel like the support or the diversity of the board that I had any runway. I had an incredible executive team that hired me, but I really was lost, right? And I didn't know what to do. And so I just went about my business, obviously was thinking about whether or not I should have stayed here. And then this individual on his own sort of outed himself to another member of my team. And that team member called and said, do you have something to tell me? And I'm like, no. And, they said, you sure you have nothing to tell me? And I'm like, no. And then, well, what happened here? I was like, how do you know about that? Well, he was so arrogant that he just said, oh, I don't think your boss likes me anymore because this is what happened. So I knew two things. She was a young woman that I needed to show that this stuff is serious, that I should have said something, right? That's a good example to her. But I was so proud of the company, a very big company that he works for, took it really seriously, right? And that person's no longer interacting with our association. And so I think to your point, Makisha, it can be really scary and clearly the first time around for me in that situation. But also, if your board, the reason why we're working so hard on board diversification is I'm not all women or all men. I mean, McKinsey's data on Women's Matter, that study every year shows that a diversified C-suite does EBITDA better and culture better. And so the more we can put all of those voices and diverse voices at a table, I think we create more pathways for people, not only to come forward, but to feel like they're going to be supported and to have kind of that zero tolerance. We're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, just one other point too, to Makisha's point as well. Once somebody has the courage to come and talk about it and admit that something is happening, you will find you're not the only one. That this individual is abusing or harassing several people. And it's such a power play on their part that you sometimes just can't move forward. I will tell you, you are never alone. And have the courage to speak out, and you'll have a lot of women championing you and telling the same stories. And ultimately, the good companies remove those individuals.
That's right.
I also just one other point to make, we're talking about it from the sexual harassment side, but as a Black woman, I will tell you, I've had so many individuals, men and women, always want to touch my hair. I have this big curly hair, as Emily has seen before.
Beautiful.
And I hardly ever straighten it after the pandemic because it was just so easy, but always wanting to touch my hair. And that is inappropriate because you wouldn't do that to anyone else. You wouldn't want to walk up to touch anyone else. And I've had those experiences that my daughter talks about, that almost like as if she's being petted like a pet. And people don't process that part of it. So it's not just one, it's cultural harassment as well. Just because something is different doesn't mean one is right or wrong. Just respect the space the way you would want to be respected.
And how about just don't touch people?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I learned that in preschool.
Lessons, right?
Yes.
Keep your hands to yourself. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Right, right.
You will not believe
Amazing how those
that's
fundamental
not
lessons.
respected.
I can't believe that, because you do have, I don't think I've ever touched your hair, have I?
No.
Okay, good. I don't think so.
Makisha, thank all of y'all. Thank you for sharing those experiences. I do think it's so important. One, so that people know they aren't alone. And two, so that we do hold people accountable. And Makisha, I really appreciate you bringing up the point about racial discrimination as well, because we know as much as white women face discrimination, the numbers are even worse for Hispanic women, for Asian women, for Black women. And so, you know, as a white woman, I want to make sure that I point that out and help lift as we climb, my new expression, because you don't fix a problem that you don't talk about, right? So really grateful you brought those things up. Nikki, I want to give you a chance to jump in here.
I agree, and have heard and experienced a few of very similar situations. I think my background being very multicultural and surrounding myself, almost sometimes my staff, like, they feel like they are working at the UN because we have such a variety of backgrounds, cultural, everything, ethnic. And it is still so funny that, I mean, it was very hard in the past 2 years of having to face, or kind of sometimes as I mean, I do label myself as an Asian, and we're kind of stuck in the middle a lot of times, and we don't voice. We're very, we don't voice our opinions or our thoughts as much. And living the American dream is an opportunity that, all of our parents have put into our brain, like, suck it up, because there are a lot of opportunities out there, and figure it out and figure where you fit in. But going to that point, like, we've had a lot of many conversations, even with our staff, about the political playing field out there. What positions do we stand? We are a very diverse food background. For example, we serve Asian cuisine in Texas. It's still a very small portion of the restaurant population here. And a really interesting story, I felt very strongly to put a sign up in our restaurant that says Black Lives Matter, and that really offended a couple of people in a few of the communities that my restaurant's in. And we had many conversations internally, and try to do it outwardly speaking to our clientele, as well as, all lives matter. But we wanted to not make sure we are discriminating anyone in particular, and just playing that middle race, I like to call ourselves sometimes, because we get hit on all sides. Like, we are being discriminating against white, we're discriminating against Black, we're discriminating against Hispanic. It's really interesting, because we're like, well, we are a super minority too. I don't know how we can be discriminating really against anyone sometimes, and we're like confused. But we're learning. And I have to say, like, being in this business in our community, I'm super proud to be a Dallasite, and being in Texas during this past 18 years and watching the evolution of humans, of kindness, of understanding, of diversification. And it's a part of all of us to have an influence on people to say, hey, live in kindness, share the love, feed the people, feed the soul. And hopefully we all can, again, lift as we can, just be on the same path and have empathy with everyone and compassion. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Love that. All right, we're running a little low on time. So I want to end by asking each of you to share some advice that you would give to a younger woman entering our industry, or kind of starting out in our industry. What advice would you give to those kind of up and coming leaders? Nikki, I'm going to go back and start with you.
Some time to think. Let me think about this. I say, stay true to yourself. Be who you are, and show up, work hard. Let them not see you as color, as a race, as a gender. Do the work, and I feel you will be surrounded by the right kind of people who are going to support you in the right way, and be sure that you are surrounding yourself with amazing people, and do the work.
Karen, you're up next.
My advice has been the same for quite some time. It's threefold, and we've already talked about one: be an advocate for yourself. Have that confidence to put your career goals out there so people know what you're interested in. Secondly, I always say learn financial skills. That opened doors for me. Once I felt that I could sit at a table and really understand how a company makes money and what they do with their money, it really puts you in a position, and you find out most people sitting around the table don't really understand financial skills that you thought all along they were smarter than you. And then lastly, as we already talked about, use your network. Find people that do the job that you want, or find people that do something that you want to you want to learn about. And people are always willing to share their stories. And for a lot of people that are listening, probably a lot of operators out there, always understand that a lot of people don't feel comfortable coming into our restaurants because they don't really know how to do what we do. It's a real talent, it's a real skill, and always look at yourself as a real professional. Operators are amazing individuals who are not only achievers, but can be very strategic and know how to get the work done. So feel that confidence in yourself and go after it.
That's great.
Love that. All right, Emily, you're next. Then I'm going to go to Makisha.
Oh, me next? Okay. So I have two things. One, well, three now, because Karen's note about financials, and it just takes me back to all the years we judged together, because she is adamant about that. And I just have to say, especially for women, the financials will set you apart. There's so many times you get to the certain point in your career when you don't understand the P&L or how the costs are structured, and it'll limit you. So learn that now. So I'm going to take that from Karen. My second is, actually something Nikki said is, I remember when I accepted this role, I had flown back from Austin and landed in Dallas, and the board chair at the time called to offer me the job. And I said, are you hiring me because I'm a woman? And I know where I was standing in the terminal when I took this call. No. And I said, I just need to be sure, because if you want me, and I'm a handful, right, then I has to be on my merit. And he said something very powerful. He said, you know what? I don't think any of us actually even realized you were a woman. And I kind of paused, like, what do you mean? Like, I thought it looked pretty good, you know? And what I realized is it was just based on who I was and my skill. They didn't care that I was a woman, right? And I believed that, and it's held true ever since. And then third, I think one of the things that really has resonated with me, which I wish every young person would realize, is you can have it all, but you also get to determine what all is. Do not let the outside world convince you of what matters. Do not let them, because what's going to happen is this is important and this is important and this is important, and you will lose yourself in that journey. So you can absolutely have it all, but you define what all is, and then you go after it and let the rest of the world worry about themselves.
That's amazing. Just to add to that is stay curious, ask questions, be willing to learn from anyone, even if the person is younger than you. We can learn something from everyone. Be open to be able to receive feedback. You have to be open to say, okay, what could I have done differently there? And I want to know your point of view. And I think the last piece is understand that all skills are transferable. So no matter what you're doing today, those same skills, even if it's a job you've never done before, can be transferred.
Definitely. And Kelsey, thanks to you for doing this. You are a superstar who is running public affairs for this great organization and doing an amazing job. So brilliant work and great idea to pull all of us together. I saw someone said we should do it monthly. I think we should.
I did see that. Yes. No, the feedback in the chat has been wonderful. I hope all of our panelists have seen it. I don't know that I've ever seen such wonderful feedback in the chat. So that's wonderful. Well, before we sign off, quick announcement. We're not only celebrating Women's History Month today, but we're celebrating one woman's birthday in particular. And I've got a few folks here who want to join me and say hello.
Hi guys. Oh, that's my team. That's a nice surprise. Wow. I bet you they're all like eating food and drinking in my office, having a good old time.
They've been hard at work. I can vouch for them.
Oh, it's great to see you all. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, this is the 49. So I guess 364 days before the big one. So I got to make this a big year.
I think it will be. All right. Well, with that note, thank you to everyone who tuned in and asked questions and chatted. This has been such a great conversation. And thank you to all of my panelists. Couldn't have asked for a better group of women to celebrate with, to learn from, and to really think about how we can make this industry stronger together. So thank y'all.
Thank you. Happy birthday,
Thank
Emily.
you. Bye, guys.